Okay, so let's go ahead and try and define these tables. So we'll start with customers, which is simple-ish. We have an ID. That will be our primary key, remember? Primary key there, and it will auto-increment. It's an integer. Then we'll have first name, last name, and email. They'll all just be simple varchars, varchars. Let's start there. So I'll create a table called customers. And we know that we're going to have an ID in there. ID is an int, and I'll just say that it's primary key auto underscore increment. And then we have first underscore name and last underscore name. So that will be a varchar, I don't know, let's just say 50. And then last name, varchar 50. And then finally, email. And email is going to be a varchar 50 as well. So that's our customers table. And now we need to work on the orders table, which the first three columns are self-explanatory or straightforward enough. An ID, order date, and amount. So let's do create table orders, and we're going to have an ID at the beginning, just like we did with customers. So it's an integer, primary key, auto increment, and then we're going to have order date, which will make an actual date. We don't need date time or timestamps. We'll just do date. And then amount. And amount is going to be a decimal, I would imagine, right, with up to 2 decimal points. And let's do it, I don't know, let's do like 8,2. Okay, so that part's simple enough. That should all be review. But now we need to add a column in for the foreign key. So this column, we can call it customer ID. I mean, we definitely can't call it ID because we already have ID, and also that would be confusing. We need to make it clear that this column belongs to, or at least is associated with, the customers table. It doesn't belong to it, I shouldn't have said that, but it is associated with data and an ID from the customers table. So we can just do customer ID as a column. And what type should it be? Well, it's an integer over here, so it should be an integer over here. If we're going to be storing 1 or 2, which are the IDs from the customer table, then of course it should be the same integer format over here. Now I'm going to show you a couple versions of this. This is the naive version for now. This technically works. You don't have to run this if you don't want to, but I'm going to create both of these tables. Let me go to my MySQL shell. I'm going to create a database first. Create database, just call it shop, and we'll use shop. Then I'll paste those two in. We should now have 2 tables. Show tables, great. So I have some pre-written insert into statements, and I'd like, if you want to follow along, you should copy these so you'll have them following this video, download the code or view the code, copy and paste these lines so that you have the same data as me. And of course, it would be great to have some crazy complicated data set, but in order for us to understand the concepts, it really is beneficial to start small. So we know, there's 5 different users or customers, and there's 5 different orders. You'll quickly understand the data set. We'll be able to tell if we're doing things correctly or not, just based on having memorized what is in here. So we're going to have 5 different customers: Boy George, George Michael, David Bowie, Blue Steel, Betty Davis. And then we have 5 different orders. So here's one, here's the other. Both of these are supposed to be placed by whoever has user ID 1 or customer ID 1, which will be Boy George. Let's just go ahead and run this, and you'll see what happens. Nothing special happens, but we have our data inserted. I'll select star from customers. Great. This is the easy table. There's no foreign key involved here. And then I'll select star from orders. And there we are. We have our 5 orders, each with a customer ID, which is supposed to be referencing an actual customer's ID. But the thing is, it doesn't have to, right? I could easily insert into orders a new row. I'll just do it right now. Insert into orders a row that has an order date and an amount and a customer ID, where the order date Let's say it's this year, 2022, 11/11, and make sure I have the right format there. Amount will be, 50.68. And then the customer ID is going to be 975. But there is definitely no customer with that ID, which would be a problem. We probably don't want that to happen, but nothing is stopping it except for my stupid syntax error. What did I mess up here? Insert into orders. There's an S there. That was bad timing. Right when I said nothing is stopping us, we actually did get stopped. So anyway, now nothing is stopping us from inserting a completely fictitious customer ID. And that might not seem that bad. So what if there's no ID or customer with that ID? But then when we start to write queries later on, and we want to, we probably want to have a customer associated with every order, we're going to have a bunch of missing data or data that doesn't make sense. We want to enforce a rule. If we have a foreign key in the orders column or the orders table called customer ID that is supposed to be linked to a real customer in the customers table, why don't we set up a rule or a constraint that says this has to be a real ID? We're going to do that. And the way that we do that is by using the foreign key constraint. So just like we have primary key is relatively simple. It just says this ID, in our case, has to be unique. Now, when we set up a foreign key constraint, it doesn't have to be unique, but it does have to reference a real ID in the other table. So I'm going to say customer ID is an integer. I'm just going to leave that. But then below, I'm going to add my foreign key constraint. So what we do is we write foreign key, and then in parentheses, the name of the column in this table that we're trying to add this constraint to. So this doesn't do a whole lot just yet, but we're saying this customer ID is a foreign key. But then the really important part is we say it's references the customers table, right? The customers table, this particular column ID. And now, no semicolon, now we have cemented this relationship. We have done essentially what this arrow shows here. We have told MySQL, this is not just any old integer. You can't just make, 10,000 in here. You can't put 999 as a customer ID unless there is truly an ID in the customers table of 999. So whatever value we have in here has to be a valid existing customer. So let's test it out. Foreign key customer ID, just one more time, that's what this column is called, is referencing the customers table ID column. Okay, so I'm going to drop my two existing tables that I made, although I really don't have to drop customers, but I am going to do it just to start fresh. So you could copy and paste this yourself if you want to run it. Let's just drop table customers, and I need a semicolon, drop table orders, and then I will create these two tables again, and then I'll insert our data. This is perfectly valid data, right? We don't have to worry about this. I've written this data so that it works. We have ID of 1, 2, and 5. Well, this should have ID of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all of these should be real IDs. But now, if I try and insert, let's just do a select star from orders one more time. If I try and insert into orders, we'll do order date, once again, amount, customer ID. I'll insert something, again, that doesn't exist. So order date, 2022, 11/11, amount, 78.99, and then customer ID, I'll insert 54, but there is no customer with that ID, and I hit enter, we get an error. It doesn't work. It says cannot add or update a child row. A foreign key constraint fails. In other words, I can't do that. That customer ID you gave me is not a real customer ID. So that is our first and most important step in setting up this relationship. Not only do we have two tables where we've added a relationship that we as humans and programmers have to keep in mind. We've cemented that relationship in MySQL. In writing, we've said this customer ID column, every value has to be a real ID from the real customers table. A foreign table, a key from that table, will be stored in orders. Okay, so we've set that up. Simple enough. I guess I should show it will work if I use an ID that is a valid user's ID. So if we select star from, I said users, but customers rather. If we take David Bowie, who doesn't have any orders right now, 11225, right? There's no orders with the customer ID of 3. If I instead said insert with the customer ID of 3, it works. So that's just proof. It's not going to reject every single ID. It only rejects the ones that don't actually exist in our customers table. Okay, so the next thing and the real meat of this section is understanding, now that we have a relationship set up, this one-to-many relationship, where every customer can have many orders, but each order belongs to one customer, how do we do some basic operations? How do we combine the two? How do I look at this row and write a query that tells me who ordered this? Or what about finding this total amount spent by each user? How do we work with these separate tables and join them together? That's coming up.